I've been working closely with animals since the last 10 years now. And if there's one thing that I would actually like to begin with is by saying that everyone has the power to make a difference, especially for that fur baby who hasn't known any kindness all its life. And I say this after having closely worked with, in this line of work, we come across some of the most disturbing cases of animal abuse, of neglect, of pain, and of stories that actually completely shatter us. And sometimes you wonder that how is that animal even alive, or how has that animal even made it that far to begin with. But when we're talking about this situation where we say that all of us have the power to make a difference, we're talking about, we're basically trying to say that no matter how small an effort is, it doesn't go unnoticed. And in this field of work that we do with animals, it's very easy to get overwhelmed. There are too many animals that need help. There are too many animals that need help and not enough shelters and not enough resources. And it's not humanly possible to sort of, get every animal help. So even we, at the end of the day, end up feeling like, we're not doing enough, or we feel overwhelmed, or we find that, the situation is not so ideal. Or how can we go about it in a way that kind of, does justice to animals. But let's kind of take a few steps back and look at it from the perspective of the animal. I'm sure some of you, at least some of you over here, would have pets of their own. So if you have a cat, you would know how big their eyes get when they look at you, and how they follow you around, and how they have the loudest purr at the moment to give them a neck scratch. Same for if you have a dog. The most aggressive tail wag, the sloppiest kisses you'll ever receive. And the best part about their day is the part where you make it back home, right? So I mean, when you look at it from the point of view of an animal, these are very, very small things, but they're making so much difference in their lives. And we get a lot of queries when we're dealing with rescue work generally, that how do we try, we've come across an injured animal. We've tried to, maybe give it food or water. We've tried to give it first aid. Is that enough? What more can we do, right? And they always feel this way about it that, they're not, it's that they need to be doing something more. And these messages are so encouraging to see that at least in a society where animals, unfortunately, are not treated with that level of respect and dignity, someone decided to show them kindness. So that's very encouraging to see. And I say this again, that when we're actually dealing with these animals, they're like really, really broken in spirit. And we have a rescue facility here in Lahore. And our primary work is actually bringing in, treating sick street dogs and street cats. And when you bring these animals in, their body language is kind of very sad to witness firsthand. Their tails are tucked behind, their ears are curled, their body language is nervous. Cats are going to be hissing, dogs are going to flinch the moment that you actually, bring your hand forward. They don't know we're trying to help them, even though we've tried to make the environment extremely safe for them. And all of this is actually a result of the kind of treatment that these animals have received over years. And we're trying to change that over here. And with that, I do want to quickly bring in the story of one of my favorite rescues over the years, because I feel like there's way too much that I learned from this one dog. Even in my entire years of animal rescue, this one dog, I think, kind of changed everything for me in the way that she handle this situation. So this dog's called Aurora. We got this call in 2020. The dog had been shot down, and I'm not sure if you're aware, but dog culling is extremely common in Lahore, and unfortunately, a lot of dog lives are lost to this incredibly abhorrent practice. And unfortunately, Aurora was also a victim of dog culling. And when we bring this dog to the shelter, her shoulder was blown off. She had lost an extraordinary amount of blood. She had gone into respiratory distress. She was barely alive at that point, and her organs had started to shut down. Our vets kind of were not hopeful of that situation, but we thought in that one moment that, okay, because this poor dog had managed to stay alive up until this point, we have to give it a shot, right? We gave her emergency treatment. We gave her first aid, anything that we could try to kind of help her manage that blood loss. The next day, this dog, she was up on all fours, of course, because she was injured. She hadn't regained all her energy back yet. She was up on all fours, and you know what she was doing? She was wagging her tail at us. This dog that we humans had injured so badly, she was up on all fours and she was wagging her tail. She did not have this concept of, like she didn't have it in her to kind of digest or maybe understand that bad things like that had happened, because in that one moment she was only focused on the present. She was focused on the now, where she was surrounded by love, where she had people around her that were taking care of her. And I want to show you guys this video actually, because I feel like this video is one video that kind of just lives in my mind every time I sort of look and recall her case. And this one dog has rewired my brain in more ways than one, by teaching me that you can forgive, you can start from scratch, and you can begin again. All of that with kindness. And I was so mad at her, by the way, because I was like, you need to be upset with us. You need to be showing aggression. You need to be hating us at this point. And then there she was. She was just a ball of love. That's all she knew. She didn't know that she had to be all those mean things because she had received all of that mistreatment. And this is her today. She made a full recovery, and we kind of like, she made a full recovery, and she was one of our lucky dogs. We sent her to UK where she got adopted, and she lives a peaceful life now over there. And this dog, she rewired my brain, and she rewired the way that we think of animals as well. Because see, when we're talking about how much capable they are of feeling, sensing, and understanding things around them, she was a perfect example of that. She said, hey, I know you're trying to help me. I know you're here to support me. And although I have lost it all, but because I see your efforts, because I see your work, because I see what you do for me, I will try. And she did. And she flourished. And she runs on all fours. She has an amazing family. So, unfortunately, these things do happen, but I feel like the key takeaway then becomes the fact that animals are incredibly smart. They don't get enough credit for that. When we're dealing with, especially in our society, by the way, you're told to avoid them. And beyond avoiding them, you're also told to kind of not give them, you're even asked in extreme situations, because we get a lot of such cases. There are cases where a dog would have been beaten with sticks and stones. There are cases where a cat would have been, in one bizarre scenario, we had a situation where a bicycle was run over a kitten. While a child's parent was present, it all happened in front of her. And she didn't stop her child, by the way. She allowed that child to do that act of cruelty without letting her child out, because we feel like, oh, it's okay to let them do what they need to do instead of calling them out. And that's so, so horrible, because we are letting a cycle continue. We're letting our kids grow up and be those kinds of people. That's not right. That's not right by these animals, and that's not right by any of this as well. But while I talk about the fact that there are all these negative, I'd say, or cruel aspects of, actually working for animal welfare in Pakistan, there's another case that I would quickly like to highlight. Again, unfortunately, it has to do with dog culling again, because it is common. But this one time we received this call of a dog culling scenario that had taken place in Askari 10. At that point in time, our rescue vehicle was unavailable. It had gone to another part of the city to conduct a rescue operation. The reporter on ground told us that 2 dogs have died on spot. There's one that's been shot down. She's alive. She's wailing. She's crying in pain. We don't know what to do right now. And that's when all this panic ensued, because we didn't know what next steps we could take, because it's in dog culling scenarios, it's a do or die situation. You have to either get there and then, and try to mitigate the results or impact, or try to manage the situation, or otherwise it's too late. The aftermath of the whole incident itself is too much for their body to take. And it's so extreme, because when you actually look at x-rays of these dogs, they have pellet shells scattered all across their bodies. And it's so heartbreaking, because you can't even remove all of them. So the exposed wound would allow us to remove as much as we can, but even beyond the exposed wound, they're going to have hundreds and hundreds of shells still scattered around, which means they're going to, if they survive, they're going to be living with a foreign body inside their bodies for the rest of their life. We had a huge sum of people show up over there with baskets, with newspapers, with blankets, with bowls, at that point, I thought to myself, everyone thought whatever they can find, we'll just take it along, as long as that helps that animal in need, right? And we were able to get that dog help. And then we say it takes a village. Sometimes, even for animals, I feel like that village kind of comes together, and it did. And we ended up naming that dog Hope, because she kind of gave us hope for like a kinder world, and then a hope for the fact that we can coexist with animals. And I think her story particularly is one where every time I feel like as in doing this work, we feel a little defeated or discouraged, because you're not just dealing with comments like, why are you doing this? You're dealing with comments like, why are you doing this for animals? Why are you not doing this for humans? This is such a common criticism we've received over the years regarding the work that we do, but we've always tried to, bring us back to the center table and remind ourselves that someone has to do something, right? Someone has to start somewhere. Someone has to give them that little piece of hope, as I would say. And then when we're talking about our own efforts, our own individual efforts, because it's easy to get overwhelmed again, I feel like we do have in our own individual capacity, you don't really know how much of a difference you're making for an animal when you offer them help. And that help doesn't have to be anything super sophisticated. You don't need to take that animal home. You don't need to, give them a room in your house. That's not important. Sometimes it's something as small or as insignificant as a leftover piece of chicken. Even if you're offering a dog or a cat a stale piece of bread, you're making their day. And understand this, that these animals, especially in the streets of Lahore, they have not known kindness. They have only known abuse, and they have known that and we need to try and at least change some of that for them, because when we try and do that, at least we can have that some of that effort compounded. And these animals can at least try to rewire their brains just a little bit, that, okay, if one person can show me kindness, maybe all humans aren't so bad, right? If one person can offer me a piece of bread, maybe all humans aren't so bad. And when we do that, we are also allowing them to overcome fear. We're also allowing them to overcome a lot of things that these poor animals have actually known all their lives. And I feel, and that's why I say that, and that's why I would actually like to conclude with this again by saying, all of you in this room have the power to make a difference. So when we say that we should, because I'm actually referring to this comment right now, because we do address this a lot of times, where people say, oh, if you care so much, just pick all of them up and put them in a shelter. No, that is not how these animals are designed, and we cannot force them to be in a 4x4 kennel just for our own good, or just because we don't like them. We have to understand that the street and street dogs and street animals, where does that come from, and why that's important, and why we need to acknowledge it so that we can give them this space, and so that we can learn to coexist with them in that same space. So that every time you see a street dog crossing the street, you're not like, remove this dog. You're like, okay, hey, you're here, I'm also here. We share the same space. We need to understand these things. We need to teach ourselves these things. And we need to, start by making small steps, by taking these small steps towards making a difference for these animals. And again, all of you can make a difference. You just need to start somewhere. Thank you.